your questions at any time throughout our session today. We're also going to be doing a live demonstration today, which will be a little bit of a different thing than we usually do here on the webinar, so we're looking forward to bringing that to you also. Joining us today from HUD is Jerry Santana with the Neighborhood Stabilization Program team. I believe we may also have John Laswick and Mary Lee Hansen on the line. Tyler Bridges from the Disaster Recovery and Special Issues team, and also Ryan Flannery. All right, and with that, I'm going to turn it over to Tyler so we can get started on our presentation. Tyler, it's all yours. Oops. Sandy, is Tyler muted? Can you double check? Okay, I think we're good.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now. Great.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. So today we're going to be talking primarily about flags and a little bit about checklists. These are part of the new review tools of Release 713 back in May 17. And then we're going to show you some resources, and the big focus today is the live demonstration. So I'm going to go through these slides, you know, relatively quickly, but not at too fast of a pace. We'll take questions, and then we'll move on to the live demonstration. So you're not going to see any screenshots in this first set of slides. Okay, so as I said, DRGR Release 713 was released in May of 2017. It included this new feature called Review Tools, and it was meant to aid grantees and CPD reps with grant management and oversight, compliance with requirements, and also, and a big focus here, data accuracy and completeness. So these represent the kind of three primary purposes of the flag tools. DRGR, the DRGR release included four kind of primary components that make up the entire review tools. It's the new home screen and the action items list, or kind of like a to-do list, an action plan compare versions feature, which allows you to compare your current action plan to the previous action plan and it identifies the changes between the two. And then, of course, flags and enhanced review checklists, which we're going to talk about today. There's a bunch of resources online in a general webinar that we did this summer about Release 713 if you're interested in the other two components of the review tools, the home screen and the compare changes. All right, so DRGR flags, what are these things? DRGR scans and flags items similar to IDIS. So for all of you out there who are familiar with the IDIS flagging system, we're going to be doing a lot of compare and contrast to how DRGR flags work versus IDIS flags in order for you to completely understand the purpose and the functionality of the DRGR flags and how they are and are not like IDIS. DRGR flags cover a wide range of items, conditions, and criteria. So those are those three that I mentioned previously. You know, is the activity, you know, quote unquote at risk? Is there different certain compliance criteria or missing performance measures, et cetera? And these apply or can apply to projects, activities, action plans, QPRs, or grants. Almost anything in the system, we can create a flag in order to help with you know, the three main criteria. So why would a DRGR flag be generated? Well, if a project or funding delays are apparent or if concerns exist, then a flag can be created to notify both you and your CPD rep that maybe there's an area of concern here that should be worked out ahead of time and to avoid any future problems or more, you know, to avoid things we don't want. The second is maybe HUD-specified compliance criteria is not met. For example, although you may have met a national objective, that's not being reflected accurately in DRGR, so a flag will help you troubleshoot that. And then finally, basic data cleanup. So this is missing performance measures, such as you selected a housing activity, but you haven't selected, you know, the tenure or the number of housing units, whether they're single family or multifamily. So basic data cleanup flags that will help you get into compliance. So now I'm going to talk about what flags are and what flags are not. So first we're going to start with what flags are. Flags are meant to help grantees and CPD reps. These are, first and foremost, they're meant to help everybody. They're meant to be resolved rather than remediated. So most of these flags can be resolved almost right away. They're meant to be very simple flags. So receiving a flag should not cause you a great deal of alarm. It should be, oh, hey, look, this says I need to fix something. I'm going to go and fix it. And we'll talk about when it's appropriate to resolve rather than remediate a flag. Flags are required to be resolved in a timely manner, and we'll talk about what timely is, and definitely by closeout. So when you go to close out your grant, you shouldn't have active flags. And we'll also talk about how that plays into NSP closeouts, which I know are a big topic of discussion amongst NSP grantees. Flags are configurable. HUD can edit, add, edit, or remove flags at any time without a release. And so that means that we may be able to, for example, the release was in May. We added our first set of our first set of flags, which were 10 in August, and we can continue to add flags at any time. We will always add flags in batches, so you won't just get one here and one there, and we'll always notify you that the flags are coming in and also send guidance out with those new flags. In addition, we can edit them at any time. So if an existing flag is not working as designed, or if we need to carve out a special exception for a particular appropriation, we can do that kind of on the fly so that it makes these flags meaningful and helpful, for each particular situation. And finally, DRGR flags are automatically generated on a predefined schedule. So the flags are almost typically updating on a weekly basis, and that's just to not overwhelm the system. But we will be showing you a means by which you can update flags, on demand. So if you're trying to clear out your flags, you can click a button and it'll update the flags, so you don't have to wait through that weekly cycle. And Ryan, feel free to interrupt me at any time if you want to embellish. Okay, so what DRGR flags are not, right? DRGR flags are not required to be resolved in order to submit or approve an action plan, a QPR, or a voucher, okay? So if you have active flags, they will never prevent you from submitting your action plan or submitting your QPR or submitting a voucher and receiving funds from Treasury. Likewise, for CPD reps, even if there are active flags, it will not prevent you from approving an action plan or approving a QPR or approving an over-threshold voucher, for example, okay? So these are advisory flags, and we'll get into the shoulds on the next slide, but they're not preventing regular business processes from occurring. In addition, DRGR flags are not required to be remediated. So if you are unable to resolve a flag, which means clear the condition, that does not mean that you have to enter a comment for that flag in order to submit your action plan or QPR. Now, it is recommended, and we will talk about that, but it's not necessarily required like it is in the IDIS system, for example. Okay, DRGR flags. So when it comes to grantees, DRGR flags should be resolved or remediated at minimum with each action plan or QPR submission. So again, these are on typically on a weekly basis. So flags are going to be popping up all the time. Or I shouldn't say all the time, but they can, right, depending on your individual circumstance. And so the expectation is not that you constantly, each week, go in and check these flags and troubleshoot them. You should be aware of them, and you should be looking at them. Some flags are more serious than others. But at minimum, we're asking that before you submit your action plan or your QPR, that you take a look at your flags, resolve as many of them as you can, and to the extent that the flag is serious enough that it warrants some level of communication to your CPD rep, you'll want to go ahead and enter a remediation comment. Likewise, for CPD reps, DRGR flags should be reviewed at minimum with each action plan and QPR review. So again, CPD reps aren't expected to, every day or every week go look at every grantee's flags and see what's going on. Again, you may want to look at, more serious flags or timeliness flags in a timely basis. But at minimum, we're asking that you just take a look at active flags during your action plan and QPR review and make a determination of whether or not any particular flag should be resolved or can be resolved prior to your approval of the action plan or QPR, or if the remediation comment is sufficient. So that's kind of at your discretion. Okay, DRGR and IDIS flag differences. So, down the left here we have a series of criteria, and then we have the IDIS and DRGR requirement. So first, the basic workflow. In IDIS, when a flag is generated, typically it needs to be remediated and then resolved. So the flag is generated, the grantee enters a remediation comment, enters a deadline to complete that flag, and that's called a remediation plan that gets submitted to the CPD rep, and they approve or reject, and that goes back and forth until a remediation plan is approved. Then that flag is kind of, set to the side, or I think it goes down to the bottom, and then it'll reappear when the deadline has not, if the deadline wasn't met, or it'll disappear if the criteria that triggered the flag has been, resolved. In DRGR, it's completely different. So in DRGR, a flag will pop up, and you should be able to resolve it almost right away. They should be relatively simple. And if not, if you cannot resolve it, then you have the option to enter a remediation comment. So the basic workflow, IDIS, you remediate it, then you resolve it, whereas in DRGR, you should be able to resolve it almost right away without any remediation process necessary, although you have the option to enter a comment if you want, or if your CPD rep requests it.
All right, thank you.
Remediation comments, including deadlines, that's required in IDIS. You have to submit a remediation plan for every flag that is triggered, whereas in DRGR, remediation comments are recommended. In IDIS, the CPD rep must approve each remediation plan. In DRGR, that doesn't exist at all. The big difference between IDIS and DRGR is we have quarterly performance reports, and so the CPD rep is already regularly checking in with their grantee on performance, and there was no need to create an additional level of approval and kind of sidestepping the already regular 90-day process. Flags must be addressed in a timely manner. Well, that's correct for both IDIS and DRGR. IDIS, you set a deadline that's approved by your CPD rep. In DRGR, we're asking for you to take a look at them with action plan and QPR submissions. And the, for flags that cannot be, resolved at the time of action plan or QPR submission, depending on severity of the flag, you and your HUD rep will want to work out what's an appropriate timeline. And I'll give you an example there. If an activity has not seen any draws for more than 2 years, it's not likely going to be acceptable that that flag remain active for an additional 2 years. There's probably some concern there, and so you and your CPD rep will want to work out why there's been a 2-year delay and what's a reasonable amount of time to get the activity to completion. Flags require a release to add, edit, or remove. In IDIS, that is true. There's a finite set of flags in the IDIS system. That's because, most of them are tied to particular regs and statutes, and so they're kind of written into law and they're known. Whereas in DRGR, the flags are much more flexible. Yes, we have criteria-based flags, but we also have these data cleanup flags. So we can add them at any time, which means that you'll probably see them being added to the system more or less on a quarterly basis, or as quickly as we can get them in. And finally, IDIS flags exist, or excuse me, DRGR versus IDIS includes flags for at-risk, general compliance, and data cleanup. Again, like I said, IDIS has primarily compliance-based flags from the statutes and regulations, whereas in DRGR, we have a variety of flags ranging from at-risk to general compliance to data cleanup, and those are all tagged appropriately or identified in the DRGR system. And so again, when you're trying to determine the level of severity of a flag, you may look at whether or not it's an at-risk flag, a compliance flag, or a data cleanup flag. Okay, this is the DRGR basic flag workflow. So kind of 3 steps here. Starting at the left, the item is flagged. So a condition occurs in DRGR that causes a flag to be created. So this is the condition that generated the flag in the first place. The flag will be introduced into DRGR with the status of active, and it can be found from the home screen via a search. And I'm going to show you guys that on the next slide. And then Jennifer will demonstrate it live. A count of active flags will also appear in the to-do list under My Action Items on the home screen. So basically for grantees, a flag gets generated automatically by the system, and from the home screen, you will have two locations where you can, see that a flag has occurred. One, in your to-do list, it'll show up there. You'll get a count of active flags. And then if you want more detail on that flag, you can go to the flag link on the home screen, and that'll bring up your Manage Flag system. Okay, so step one, you've got a flag. What's going on? What do we do? Step two, the flag is managed. So the grantee user takes action to resolve the flag. So first and foremost, like we said previously, the idea is that you'll be actually resolving the flag rather than entering a remediation comment, coming up with a game plan, et cetera, et cetera. So you resolve the flag. If you cannot resolve the flag, then you have the option to enter remediation comments for those flags that are not resolved. And again, this is all from the home screen. And then HUD may enter comments via the action plan or QPR review screen if they wish, related to that flag that is active and remediated but not necessarily resolved. Okay, finally, the flag is resolved. When a flag is resolved, the flag status will update automatically on that weekly basis. And again, if you want to be a good grantee, like I know you all are, and you're trying to clear your active flags during action planning QPR submission, and you don't want to wait a week to see if this thing actually worked, you can actually click a button that says Update Flags, and it'll update it'll kind of run the condition of that flag again, and if you've met the criteria, the flag will go from active to completed, and voila, you've done your job. So it gets flagged, you manage it, and you finally resolve it. That's the workflow. Okay, this is DRGR Flag Access, and again, Jennifer's going to show you this during her demo for the grantees, and then I have the follow-up webinar with the HUD users. But the grantees access flags almost exclusively from the home screen. That's where where all of your management takes place. So from the home screen, that's where you search and view your flags. That's where you manage your flags, so whether or not you're resolving it and updating that flag status to show that you resolved it, or if you're entering any remediation comments in order to address flags that you're not going to be able to resolve prior to action plan or QPR submission. If you want to see what your HUD rep is going to see, then during action planning QPR submission, you can go to your review tools and you can review the active flags, and you can also see the remediation comments. So when HUD gets your action plan or QPR, they're going to be able to see the same screen you'll see, and it'll list your active flags, and it'll list whether or not you've entered any remediation comments. So this is a great QA/QC feature to ensure that what you think you've accomplished, you think you've cleared these flags out, I'm going to check one more time, what does that screen look like before I actually click Submit. And then for HUD users, it's the complete opposite. On the home screen, they can only view and search flags, but they can't do anything else there. Their real action is during the action plan and QPR review process. So that's where they can, like I said, see that screen where they can review all your active flags, they can see if you've entered any comments, and then if they wish, they can also enter a response to those comments from their review screen. Okay, so current flags and guidance. There are 10 flags that are currently in the system, and we've created this guidance, which is at this link here, and you'll see I really encourage everybody, grantees and CPD reps alike, to take a look at this. And I'm just going to walk through this first example here. Starting from the left, it identifies the flag. So the first flag is the activity end date passed, but activity is not completed. Okay, so it's saying that's the flag. What do I do? So then it says, well, which programs does this apply to, either disaster or NSP? And so in this case, NSP, this does apply to NSP. Flag level, is it at the grant level? Is it at the action plan level? Is it the activity level? In this case, the flag is the activity end date passed, so that's at the activity level. And then the condition, so what is causing this flag to occur? Okay, well, it says here, the activity with an activity status of underway has a projected activity end date that has passed. So what this is saying is if an activity is currently underway and the projected end date is later than today, a flag has been generated as a result. It's that simple. So you have a few options here. The first is you edit the projected activity end date to reflect the new date the activity is expected to be completed. And if you do choose that route, you also need to enter action plan submission comments to explain the reason for the project delay. And then your CPD rep can review that with you. Or if it's just a, DRGR reporting error, the activity is fully drawn, you completed it 6 months ago, but you never got around to clicking complete, well, then maybe all you need to do is change the activity status to complete, okay? So that's the grantee actions. Those are, the way that you would resolve this flag. And then finally, the HUD action, you would want to review whatever action was taken and also review the reason for delay if necessary. And then, of course, you always want to be working with your grantee to ensure the timely expenditure of funds. So each one of these flags has a purpose, and it has specific conditions that trigger the flag. And here we try to do our best to provide the recommended actions for not only the grantee but the HUD rep, depending on the potential scenarios that are causing this flag to exist. Please take a look at that. All right, I think just a couple more slides here before we get to the question and then the live demo. There are 3 reports currently in the grantee user reports and also available for field office users. And you should use these to track and troubleshoot your active flags. So MicroStrategy is a really powerful tool. We highly recommend it. The 3 different reports are Admin Report 06A, 06B, and 06C. They are differentiated based off the flag level. So most of the flags that we currently have in the system are activity level, but some of them are grant level. For example, those that when it comes to caps, and some of them are QPR level. I think that's the if your QPR has not been submitted on time. So take a look at these. It'll provide all the criteria and the activities that are causing the flag. It'll tell you what's going on, and it'll give you the flag status so you can, print this out or do whatever you need to do to kind of check these flags off and get them cleared out. Okay, so that's the end of the flag discussion. I've only got 2 slides on review checklists, so I'm going to get through this and then we'll open it up for questions. Review checklists. Review checklists now contain auto-computed answers. So grantees are probably not too familiar with review checklists, but CPD reps have review checklists for action plans, QPRs, and grant closeouts. So we have checklists in the system that help us walk through the process and make sure that action plans, QPRs, and closeouts are being properly reviewed in accordance with the requirements. Just like the flags, these are configurable, so we can change these at any time in order to reflect new requirements or to correct additional requirements. But this is primarily the key takeaway here is the system is now answering these questions for us. So if the question can be data-driven, meaning the system can calculate the information for us, then the question can be answered for us as well. And what's cool about this is that grantees can see these checklists as well. So for grantee users, you will actually be able to see the same review checklist that HUD will use, and for all of the questions that are auto-answered, you'll be able to see whether you got a positive or a negative response there, and you'll actually have an opportunity to correct that error or deficiency in real time and see that question go from no to yes, right? So if you go to submit your action plan and you open up the checklist, you don't have to edit it. There's nothing you can do there, but you see, oh, hey, this question is saying that that I'm not meeting the requirement, but I really am. If I just go in and change this one thing, then I'll be fine. And so you can actually go in, change that item in your action plan, go back to the checklist, and then the system will show you that you have, in fact, satisfied that requirement. And so the idea here is, just like flags, you'll review the checklist, and before you submit it to your HUD rep, you'll have the opportunity to see what they're going to see and be proactive about correcting those things, or at least have an explanation for why it is the way it is. So just to kind of go through the bullets here, you can access these checklists from the review tools. You should use it as a quality check prior to your action plan and QPR submission, and you can view the auto-generated answers and correct them in real time prior to action plan and QPR submission. Once HUD receives them and goes to plan or QPR, they will be able to access these from their review screens. They should certainly use them during action plan and QPR reviews, and they cannot change the auto-generated answers, but they do have the ability to enter comments on them. Okay, quickly, I just want to go through some resources. I cannot emphasize this enough. There are excellent resources available on the HUD Exchange. They're all up to date, I can guarantee you, because I'm personally responsible for getting them up there. So go to the HUD Exchange. Please go to look at these resources. The user manual provides step-by-step instructions with screenshots. It's really beneficial. It's updated for this release. Chapter 2, I think, is the home screen. And then you can also take a look at chapter, I think it's 4 and 6 for action planning QPR in order to look at, different things for action plans and review tools and flags, et cetera. Then we also have the fact sheets. Click there, and that's where you'll get that table I showed with the 10 different flags, and also just various fact sheets for every release, including all of the review tools. And finally, if you have any questions about flags, please submit them to Ask a Question. They are our first line of defense. They have all been trained on this. They are all very familiar with all of the aspects here. We need it to go through the AAQ because we need to track grantees' concerns, ideas, common problems, so that we can make sure that we are making these easy for you and making sure that they are working for you. Okay, with that, I will turn it over to questions, which I believe should have been submitted in writing. And Jennifer?
Yeah, thank you. So we have one question submitted so far in writing, and the question asks, will the flag report admin 06 reflect whether a remediation comment has been made? Additionally, can the name of the activities be included in the admin 06 report? Currently, it's only the activity numbers.
Thank you for that. I will, if we can make a note, I actually was just on another call and I got the same question on whether or not remediation comments can be added to that report. And so it sounds like that's something folks want, and I will definitely look into getting that added to the report. What was the question about activity number versus name? I'm sorry, I didn't.
So I guess the report only lists the activity number, and they'd like to also see the name on the report, since sometimes the name is more descriptive than just the number.
I see. Yes, I'll go ahead and add activity name to the reports as well.
Okay, great. See, you guys, you just have to ask. Okay. New question. Can HUD develop a report in the reports module that contains all of our flags so that we don't have to drill through multiple pages?
So I want that as well. I think there was a reason why they were split out in the first place, but I have asked our programmers to put it all into one report. We have been really busy with the upcoming release, and so that is on our to-do list to get just one flag report. So at minimum, we'll get the first two requests put into the system, and then we'll also work on getting that flag report consolidated.
Thank you. Another question asks, how will this work for NDR programs, since we had to create shells of activities to accomplish certain items like outcome measures?
So we have already begun to get feedback about the flags and how they're not necessarily working for particular appropriations, and NDR is a great example. So essentially, the flag that is troubling NDR is they created activities for what's called outcome values, and they have no budget. They're only meant to report accomplishments on. And the flag is saying you have no accomplishments. And so what we're going to do is, this is an example of why the flags are great, because we can configure them and we can edit them on the fly without a release, and we can tailor them to appropriation. So that flag, we created it based off of existing programmatic requirements for both NSP and DR, but because of this unique circumstance for NDR, we'll be able to edit that flag and essentially say, if an activity has a zero budget, then ignore this flag, because there's no national objective that needs to be met on an activity that does not expend federal funds. So we will be carving that out. In addition, Sandy has a similar issue where they have multiple rounds of funding and accomplishments are not necessarily reported in each activity. And so we're looking at a way, and this applies to NSP as well, where you may have, for example, created an acquisition, a rehab, and a disposition activity, or you may have created more than one activity that was essentially meeting the same national objective. And so in that case, you have these empty activities, or not empty, you'll have funds drawn, but no accomplishments. So we're looking at creating the ability to utilize the associated activities feature, where the flag will look at the accomplishments of all of the associated activities, and if there are accomplishments entered, then it'll, you know, resolve itself on that flag.
I love that. That's fantastic. Yes, very good. Okay, next question is, when I do a search for a flag that returns more than 10 items, it only shows first page and loses search criteria in subsequent pages. How do I make it keep the search criteria?
I love these questions. You guys are all using these features, I can tell. That is a defect, and we're going to correct it in the next release. The next release is coming out in, I think, 2 weeks. It'll be available on November 20th is when you'll see that fixed. And so you'll be able to actually scroll through those, you know, normally, or as it should function. In the meantime, the only thing I can offer is to use the reports in order to identify the flags that that may have issues, and then you can use that search tool in order to navigate through the system. You'll just want to enter the activity number, for example, as search criteria, so that you can actually get to that activity.
Great, thank you. Another question asks, is it true that if you are still making updates to an activity, even if complete, it should not be marked complete until all edits are completed?
The system will not allow you, or it should not allow you, to make any edits to an activity that is marked complete. So once an activity is complete, it's supposed to more or less freeze you from making any additional changes. So if anybody is not experiencing that, please submit that to the AAQ. But I would confirm the question. The answer is yes. It is true that if an activity is marked complete, you cannot make any changes to that activity. If you do need to make changes, you can switch it back to underway, make the changes that you need to do, and then switch it back to complete.
Great, thank you. Next question, one of our DR grants has a flag that says, incorrectly, that we are exceeding the planning cap. Can that value be checked?
Good question. That grantee, you know, please go ahead and email me directly. I would like to be, we can do anything with these flags. We can take a flag and carve out a single grantee, a single grant, a single appropriation, a single program. So we can really do anything we want. If you are having trouble with a flag, actually I should be consistent here. Email them to the DRGR AAQ so that we can appropriately address it. So yeah, if you have a flag and it's incorrect, we need to know right away. Because we don't want you to be burdened with incorrect flags. We don't want you to, feel stressed or frustrated, and we don't want to burden you and your CPD rep with something that is our problem or something that we need to fix. So if you can funnel those through the AAQ, I know all of them personally. They will communicate with me right away, and we will do our best to get that corrected for you.
Thank you. Okay, someone asks, I have a grantee with 177 flags. Are we required to go back and address flags related to older QPRs?
So that's an excellent question. The system is designed so that QPR-based flags only apply to the current QPR. So just like is long-standing guidance, if something is wrong with the previous QPR, we do not open up old QPRs. We just correct them in the current QPR. The flags are designed in the same way. When a QPR goes from submitted to reviewed and approved, any active flags associated with that QPR essentially go away. We convert them to something called acknowledged, which basically says, wipe out the active flags, kind of ignore them, if you will, and then the system will create an entirely new set of flags only if the conditions were not met. So, for example, if a previous activity had a flag that said expenditures exceed drawdowns by more than 10%, and that's a problem in most cases, and if the CPD rep and the grantee saw that flag and did nothing about it, the system will close that flag, and then in the next QPR, that will remain a problem until the grantee either draws more funds or reduces the expenditures. So I guess in essence what I'm trying to say is that, you know, instead of having the system create 177 QPR flags every single quarter, we basically just close out all previous QPR flags and then create a fresh set of QPR flags that need to be addressed. The idea here is, and I know that, you know, we're all getting used to these flags, the idea is once these flags are kind of up and running and we kind of get through this initial, whoa, there's a lot of flags, you're not going to be getting many more because A, you'll know that you're going to get a flag, so you're going to avoid that, or B, you're going to have, you know, you're going to be reviewing your flags before action plan and QPR submission, and you're going to be, you know, cognizant of the fact that you don't want these to really pile up and you know how to address them. So I hope that answers the question.
I think that's helpful. Thanks. All right. So someone says that they have 256 flags, but their flag report is only showing 50 flags.
So that could be because there are 3 different flag reports. So there's the activity, the grant, and the QPR report. And again, we previously discussed trying to, you know, get those all into one report. Another thing may be that the report page by axis, if you have more than one grant, let's say you have NSP 1 and 3, for example, the page by may be filtering by just one particular grant, whereas in your search screen, you're doing a blank search and it's just showing you all of your flags. So take a look at all 3 reports and see if it's filtering, you know, by just that grant. And if it still looks like it's not showing all of your flags, please submit that to the AAQ so we can take a look and make sure that those reports are working properly.
Great. Another question says, activities that are expected to generate program income have to remain open so the funds can be receded against them. Is there a way to identify these activities so they don't continue to generate flags? I'm actually wondering if this is related to the activity end date, Tyler, maybe. So maybe they just need to fix that, but maybe you have some other thoughts too.
Yeah, you know, so thank you for the question. I would, you know, there would be kind of different responses based off of the flag that you are getting. So I can think of a couple. You know, the activity end date might be one. It could be fully drawn, no accomplishments. So if the activity, gosh, how do I would need to know more information. I think it's a great question. If you have the opportunity to provide more clarification as we go through this, that'd be great. Otherwise, submit it through the AAQ. Another thing too, I should say, and why we want these questions to go through the AAQ is we will eventually start to see common questions come through, and we'll, you know, release an FAQ of sorts to make sure that grantees are getting answers to the most common questions. I don't know, Jennifer, if you have something to add from an NSP perspective that maybe I'm missing.
No, I think that makes sense. Yeah, more information on this one would definitely help. So if you do have more detail on what type of flag this is, what's causing the flag, what message you're getting, and you want to send that in, we can try to answer your question a little more specifically. Okay, I think that's it. Let me see here. Let's double check. Oh.
I'm sure. I know I haven't given Brian a chance. I've kind of paused. I'll answer this question, and then if Brian has anything he'd like to add before we move on to you, Jennifer.
Sure, yeah. So this question, this is another question about flag reports. They're saying that 2 of their flag reports return no data. But I think you kind of gave a good summary of how you manage the reports, unless there's something else you want to say.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, if you're getting a no data returns, then you'll want to look at what the report's criteria is showing versus what the application or actual DRGR is showing. So just to make sure that the reports are doing a one-for-one match. And in addition, if, let's say that DRGR is saying that you have 50 flags and they're all activity-based flags, well then, yeah, the 2 of the 3 reports would return no data because you don't have any flags for grant and QPR, for example.
Yeah. Okay, the next question says, can multiple flags appear for a single issue? For example, if a flag is issued for no drawdowns in 180 days and no action is taken, will the same flag appear again and again until the issue is resolved?
So that type of, no flag will duplicate itself. A flag will exist until it's resolved. So, if the flag is activity hasn't been drawn for 180 days, that flag will just stay there until a drawdown, takes place or the activity is completed. So you won't get, 2 flags that say, oh, it's been 360 days, so now you have 2 180-day flags. That will not happen. The only 2 flags that are related to that, drawdowns over time are, there's a flag that says you haven't drawn in 180 days, and then I think there's another one that says you haven't drawn in 720 days. I think it's meant to be 2 quarters and then 2 years. But yeah, no, there should never be an instance where you're getting 2 flags for the same purpose.
Okay, thank you. Someone asks, I'm in the process of reviewing the action plan in QPR. I have a QPR in progress from last year, so 3 QPRs ago. Do I have to review the old QPR, and do I need to review the action plan first before I review any QPRs?
Is this coming from a HUD user or a?
I think this is, I'm not sure.
Well, they're saying review, so. Well, so this is unrelated to flags, but I'll answer the question. QPRs need to be submitted, reviewed, and approved in order. And not only that, but an action plan should be in reviewed and approved status during your QPR review. This causes a lot of issues. When QPRs are not submitted, reviewed, and approved in a timely manner or on time and during the windows that they're supposed to be, when you get these QPRs stacked up, you start to get QPRs that are based on the most current reviewed and approved action plan, and so that means a QPR from a year ago is going to be looking at the action plan you approved yesterday, and that is not going to reflect what happened back then. And so you have to stay on top of these because of the nuances of the system and how it works. The QPRs are really fluid. They're meant to capture, points in time to the best of the system's ability. And if we get too far off, then you get, these data inaccuracies. So that's, that's something that goes between the CPD rep and the grantee in terms of timeliness of reporting requirements and all of that. But when it comes to DRGR, when you get into situations like this, you need to review and approve the QPRs in order, starting with the earliest one, and then come to the most current one. And if any flags are being triggered, they should likely be corrected in the current QPR.
Great. Okay, and that was a HUD user, by the way. Someone asks, who can help with questions about the flags specific to my program?
Okay. I would recommend that any user that needs help with flags should contact the DRGR AAQ. And if the questions, the AAQ is tasked with answering questions, technical in nature, so they won't be able to help with policy-related questions per se, or, what should or shouldn't you do versus this is how you're supposed to do this. But we can get your HUD rep involved and, be able to help you. There's also NSP office hours. There's a lot of different resources out there that Jennifer can probably describe better than I on what any NSP grantee can do to get help in any aspect of their program, including DRGR. And for disaster grantees, you'll want to work with the DRGR AAQ and your CPD rep. Real quick, Jennifer, I want to make sure that we have enough time to get to the live demo and also have follow-up questions there. So I think we've got about 40 minutes. And I'm sorry, Ryan, are you on? I'm not sure if he was able to join.
I am.
Okay, I want to pause here and give Ryan, the Assistant Director of the Disaster Recovery and Special Issues Division and DRGR Extraordinaire, an opportunity to address you guys.
Thanks, Tyler. Just really quick, just great job. You're really explaining these flags very clearly, and hopefully it's beneficial to all the users out there. And I just want to take a minute to thank you all for joining us. We have a pretty good attendance here. And for those of you who were on our last webinar on flags, we had our release. I am very excited about flags, about the checklists, and about really what they'll be able to do within the system and then what we'll be able to use them to do. You know, Tyler hit this point a few times, but the fact that both grantees and HUD reps can see these flags is, to me, in terms of reporting and keeping on top of data, I think it's a real huge benefit. And, you know, if everything is working perfectly and in a perfect world, you know, HUD reps, you should never be seeing something that the system is auto-calculating or displaying as an auto or a data-driven flag. Because your grantees should be seeing those before and correcting them. But I do, again, want to reiterate that the system is not perfect, and so we really do rely on feedback from you all, both grantees and HUD users, to be able to provide us with that feedback and send it to the AAQ so that we can do our QA and QC on our end to make sure that things are working smoothly. So again, with that, thank you. I'm here. I can help answer questions, but Tyler, you're doing an excellent job, so I'm staying pretty quiet for the most part.
All right, thanks so much, Ryan. Jennifer, at this time, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to you so we can actually show grantees what the heck we're talking about.
Perfect. Yay. Okay, so as Tyler's doing that, there was a question about what is this AAQ thing you keep talking about? And so just to clarify as we're switching over to the demo, the AAQ is the Ask a Question, and you can find that on the HUD Resource Exchange under the Get Assistance page of the Exchange. And there are a number of AAQ pools, including one specifically for DRGR, one specifically for NSP, one specifically for lots of things. And so you can go ahead and submit a question through the AAQ, and you'll get a response from an expert within a couple days. Yeah, so with that, we're gonna go over and do this live demonstration, which is something a little different than we usually do here on the webinars, but we thought that this would be a really great opportunity to show you how these work in real life and show you what cool features we've got here now in DRGR. So Sandy, can you see the login screen for DRGR? I just want to make sure that's displaying properly. Or Tyler,
yes,
anybody? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I can see it, yep.
Perfect, okay. So I'm going to show you one little trick first that is cool for all DRGR users, no matter what you're using the system to do, and that is to set your browser to compatibility view. And so the first thing you should always know about DRGR is that you always want to be using Internet Explorer. You never want to use Chrome or Firefox or that new Edge browser that I don't even know what it really does, but people get tricked into using that fairly often lately. And so you want to make sure that you're using Internet Explorer. And DRGR actually works best in an older version of Explorer. And so what we recommend that you do before you even log in is set your browser to compatibility view mode. And you do that by going to your upper right-hand corner of your browser. You're going to see a little house, a star, and something that looks like a gear all the way up here in the right-hand corner. If you click on that little gear, you're going to see in that drop-down an option for compatibility view settings, and you're going to click on that. You can also access compatibility view settings through your tools menu. So if you go to your tools menu on your toolbar, you'll find compatibility view settings there as well. When you click on that, you're going to get this pop-up box, and at the top, it's going to say HUD.gov. You just click Add. It moves to the bottom box, and then you close. And it's that simple to set your browser to compatibility view. And that's going to save you a lot of headaches on lots of functions that you try to do within the system. So we definitely recommend that you start there when you go to log in to DRGR. Okay, and with that, I'm going to log in, and I'm going to show you all some really cool things about the review tools. Now the first thing you're going to see once we are in the system, and here we are, is that on your first page, you, as we talked about, you're going to land here in the home screen. And in the home screen, you have some new features, including news here on the left side, and then also your action items on the right side. And your active flags, any active flags you have, will always be listed here on the left side of your home screen. So it's never going to be a mystery to you that you have flags. You're always going to have this notice here right when you log into DRGR. So the first thing I'm going to do is show you where the review tools function is located in the action plan and in the QPR, and then I'll do a demonstration of how you can use the checklist and managing flags features. So if you want to find your review tools in the action plan, we're going to click on Action Plan at the top menu bar. That takes us into our Action Plan module. I go to open a grant, I go to my status column, and I click on the status of the grant I'd like to open. So I click on Original in Progress, and that opens my action plan for that grant. Once the action plan opens, you're going to see on your left-hand menu bar a list of functions that you can use within the action plan. And in that very top box, you have your review tools link right there at the bottom of that very top box on the left-hand bar. So I'm over here on the left, I'm going to click Review Tools. When I click Review Tools, it's actually going to open a new window. So it opens this pop-up window, and on this pop-up window, you have all of your review tool functions here that summarizes information for you, such as your grant number, any comments that you have provided in your submission, any HUD review comments that HUD has made, and then if HUD has attached any supporting documents related to their review, those would be shown here as well. As you can see, there aren't any comments here, but if there were, this is where you find them. We also have the display changes link. So this is that link that's going to show you the difference between this period's QPR and then the previous, or not this period, but this current version of the QPR, and then the previous version of the action plan. Why do I keep saying that? Yes, thank you. So let me backtrack. We're in the action plan module, and the action plan module has this display changes features. It's not in the QPR because the display changes is to compare your current action plan to your previously approved action plan. And that's not the way QPRs work, right? And so you're just going to submit a new QPR each period. And so for the display changes, you can only use this in the action plan module, and you would click on this link here under display changes, and you would get that view where it compares your current action plan to your previous action plan. And I'm not going to do that here because this is actually a test environment and a training environment, and so we don't have an old action plan set up. But if you're interested in learning more about the display changes features, you can look at those fact sheets that Tyler mentioned a bit ago. They're really good resource for understanding how the display changes work. The other thing we have here is our review checklist. So if you want to look at the checklist, and we're going to do this in more detail in a minute, but right now I just want to walk you through where you find things. And so this is your review checklist link here. And then you have your flag summary. And as you can see here, these are your flags for this particular grant. And you can see just some very basic summary information for this flag. Now, in order to manage this flag, we're going to do that over in the home screen, and we're going to do that in just a minute once I get through showing you where you find all these different things. So again, this is your review tools page, and this is giving you all the summary information about your checklist, your flags, and then your display changes here for the action plan. So now I'm also going to show you where you can find these review tools in the QPR, because as Tyler explained, these review tools are available both in the action plan and in the QPR, and how you find them is very, very similar. So in the QPR, you're going to go into your QPR by clicking on the Add Edit link at the end of the row for whichever grant you'd like to enter. Now, when you click on this, you are going to get to a list of all of your QPRs for the current and previous quarters. Now, for any QPR that is actually in approved status or submitted status, you're going to have a Review Tools link right out here next to the Edit link. But for one that is in Edit status, you actually want to enter the QPR itself, and then again, on the left-hand menu, you're going to see that Review Tools link. So just like the action plan, you're going to get inside the QPR, and you're going to find the link on the left-hand menu. And then very similarly, or exactly the same as the action plan, when you click on that Review Tools link, it creates a new window, and it shows you the same sorts of summary information related to your submission comments, your HUD review comments. You have your review checklist link there, and this review checklist, of course, will be specific to QPR issues. And then you have your QPR flag summary as well. Of course, you don't see a display changes link here because that's an action plan feature. I'm going to go ahead and close that. So with that, now you know how you reach your review tools, and you know how you can see a summary of all this information, and you know how you can actually access the checklist. So let's do the checklist for the action plan. I'm going to go into the action plan again, and I'm going to show you how this works on one of these grants here by clicking on the action plan status to open that grant. And then I'm going to go over to Review Tools on the left-hand menu. My Review Tools opens, and for this one, I'm going to work on my checklist. So here I am. I've been doing some edits to my action plan, and now I want to make sure that it's in really good shape before I submit it to my HUD rep, because when I submit it to my HUD rep, they're going to be using this checklist to make sure that I've done all the things I need to do with my action plan. So better to be proactive and clear any concerns before I make my submission. So I click on the review checklist. Again, this opens in a new tab on your browser. And when this opens, you're going to see that we've got a number of icons here at the very top of this checklist, right up here at the top. Now, these different icons, again, help you understand the nature of these questions. In short, you really want to be looking for any question that has a yellow triangle next to it with an exclamation point, because those are your warning questions. So those are things that you know you have to deal with, preferably before you submit your action plan, so that when HUD uses this checklist to review your action plan, they're not seeing any warning signs, right? So you want to clear any warning signs. In addition to that, these other icons help you to understand how these answers were generated. And so if an answer is pre-calculated by the system, you're going to see this sort of blue box here. If it was manually inputted by your HUD rep, you're going to see the little hand. Any questions that were pre-calculated and they have this orange circle, you'll be able to see what supporting data went into that pre-calculated answer. And then finally, any question with a star is a mandatory question that the HUD reps will have to answer. And so we're just going to take a look at our checklist here and see if we have any of these little yellow triangles so that we can clear those concerns. And so we're going to scroll through, and oh, look at that. I do have a yellow triangle here for this question. And this question says, does the submission contain a narrative describing how the distribution and uses of funds will meet the requirements of the law? And so we're going to go back and look at our narratives in our action plan, because we know in our action plan we should have a narrative for distribution and uses of funds, and we're sure that we had completed that, but we better double check. So here we are back on our action plan. I just clicked back into my DRGR tab, and I'm going to scroll down. Oh, and in fact I don't have a narrative for distribution and uses of funds. It's all blank. And this is actually something that has happened to me with a couple grantees. They thought that they had completed all this, and it just turned out that they had accidentally pasted that information into the wrong narrative box. So to fix that, I'm just going to take it out of that box and put it into this one. And of course, you'd fix it in whatever way makes sense. In this case, this grantee just happened to paste the information into the wrong box. And so we fix that, and we go ahead and we save it. Now, once we save it, we're going to be able to go back into that action plan and click on our review tools again. Open our checklist nice and fresh this time to see if that is still a problem on our checklist or if that was enough to resolve the issue. And so we're going to be looking for any of those little yellow triangles again. It sometimes takes a second to load. Okay, so we're going to look for yellow triangles. So we're going to scroll down, and that yellow triangle had been next to question 2. And as you can see, that little yellow triangle is no longer there. So this is an auto-calculated question. We know that by that little blue box there. And because we went ahead and saved our change that we made based on this review that we had done before, when we open this checklist again, the system auto-calculated all these questions nice and fresh for us and found that we had fixed our problem, and so that little yellow triangle goes away. And so it is a really great feature.
This honestly impresses me every single time.
I know. Isn't it great? I love it. It's so helpful. This is really a way to get you guys more tools that help you manage your submissions. And so this is going to save you a lot of time because it's going to minimize the back and forth with your HUD reps, because they would see this same thing when they use their checklist, but now they'd have to come back to you and say, can you please fix this? And then you'd have to fix it and resubmit it. And so this checklist is great. It is giving you information right up front that you need to provide the most quality submission that you can to your HUD rep. And then as you fix these things in real time, you can refresh and see that they've been resolved. And so I think that these tools are just such a gift, really. Okay, so those are that's the checklist. And the checklist, again, works the same in the QPR. Of course, the QPR will have QPR-specific questions there, but you'll open it exactly the same way. The icons work the same. It'll refresh the same as you clear the concerns. All right, and so with that, Tyler, is there anything you want to say about checklists before I move on to do the flags?
I will say that we have not configured these checklists for any appropriations yet. We really want to, obviously, because they're really cool, and I just love them. But we have been really bogged down with getting some flags into the system, and then also, working on this current release. So it is our goal to get, right now, the standard checklists are in the system. So HUD reps still have all of the tools they need to review, as they normally would, and grantees actually should be able to see those checklists. But as far as configuring these questions to answer themselves, that is something that we are currently working on. So just kind of a heads up, this is, it's ready to go. We just have to start doing them. We have to literally configure these one by one. So hats off to Khaki for that. So just, kind of stay tuned, and we'll send out notices when we get there.
Great, thank you. Okay, so to manage our flags, as I said, you can see the summary of your flags by using that review tool function. But if you want to actually manage the flags, you're going to go over to your home screen. I'm going to click on home screen at the top of the menu bar, and on the left-hand side, you're going to see a link for flags. And so I'm going to click on that flags link on the left-hand side of your home screen. And when it opens, you're going to see your search criteria. And with this search criteria, you can change between active, completed, or acknowledged flags. You can choose to search just for QPR or action plan flags. And you can even expand your search criteria to include things that make it even more specific, like activity numbers or grant status, flag dates, things like that. So there are lots of ways to refine your search. I'm just going to go ahead and click search and see all my active flags. It's going to take a second to load. So when it loads, we're going to see that we have all of our active flags here, and we have 9 of them. We saw that on our home screen, right? It told us that we had 9 active flags. So I'm going to show you what you can do to actually remediate a flag first rather than resolve it. Now, let's say that we had a series of flags that all had the same issue, and we weren't quite ready to resolve the issue that's causing the flag for whatever reason, but we know that we need to get our QPR submitted. And so, you know, we're up against the QPR submission deadline. We don't have time to resolve it all, or maybe we don't have all the information that we need right now to resolve them. So we want to remediate them. We want to provide HUD with as much information as we can about what we're doing with these flags. We know they exist. What are we going to do about them? So you can actually choose multiple flags at one time, and then, but with these little check boxes here in the very first column, just check them off, and then click Edit at the bottom of the screen. And when you click Edit, it's going to add all of the flags that you selected with those check boxes. So as you can see here, I have those 3 flags all laid out for me, giving me all the different components of information about this flag. And now if I want to include a remediation comment, and I'm just going to say something simple like this flag will be resolved next quarter. And of course, you'd want to say a little more here about why you can't resolve it today, but for sake of time, I'll just leave that comment pretty short. And then I click Copy Comment to All Activities on the page. And when I click that box to copy the comment, when I scroll down, I now see that comment under every flag that I had chosen to add to this page. And so this is a way to save you some time if you're needing to add a remediation comment that's applicable to more than one flag. So it's really helpful. Again, you want your remediation comments to be as thorough and complete as you can so that your HUD rep understands why this flag hasn't been resolved yet. All right. And with that, I'm going to go back to my previous page, and I'm going to show you how to resolve a flag. And for this one, I'm actually going to use an action plan flag. Okay, so I'm going to work on this very first flag here, this action plan flag. And you can either click this box here and choose Edit, or you can just click on the activity number, and then it opens the flag. So here I am in this flag, and I love this about this feature. So I'm in this flag. I know I want to resolve it. So this flag here is about environmental status. We can see that based on the flag criteria. So apparently the environmental status probably hasn't been completed in the system, and so that's why we've got this flag. So we know it's environmental status. To fix the environmental status, we do that in our action plan. So we would have to go to the activity within the action plan and change the environmental review status within that activity. What's great about this flag function and what I love so much is that all I have to do is click Edit Activity right here from the flags screen, and presto, there I am right in the activity that I need to manage. And I think that is a beautiful thing, because otherwise you'd have to pop over to the action plan, drill down to your activity, and then keep bouncing around between modules. This takes you right to where you need to go. And so you can see down here at the bottom of this Edit Activity page that we have our environmental assessment box, and indeed it has not been completed, so I'm going to say that this environmental assessment was complete. Of course, you want to be sure that that's true. If it's underway, you can say that. I'm going to continue to the next screen. And then I'm going to save the activity, and like magic, it's going to pop me right back into flags. Isn't that great? I think this is a beautiful thing. Okay, so here I am back in flags. Now, as you can see, I'm here back in flags, and this flag status is still marked active because it hasn't been updated yet. Okay, so I'm going to save and return to the previous page, and I'm going to show you how I can update the flag status manually. as Tyler mentioned, all the flag statuses will be updated on a schedule that HUD creates, but you can actually update your flag status manually as you resolve them. So I'm going to click on that flag that I was just working on, just select it from the first column, scroll to the bottom, click Update Selected Flags. And once I do that, I'm going to be able to show you here that the status of that flag is going to change from active to completed. And so if I scroll across, you actually have to move down a bit on your browser, but you have a bar that you can scroll across. So if I scroll across, the flag status column is the second to last column, and now you can see that that flag status is marked completed. And I did that by manually updating the flag status using that Update Selected Flags button at the bottom. Okay, so I think that's great. All this works, you know, just I think really smoothly. And so if you go back to your home screen, you're now going to see that I have 8 active flags, right? Originally I had 9. I resolved 1. I've marked it complete using the Update Flags feature, and now I have 8 flags. So, Tyler, do you have anything else you wanted to add about flags?
I mean, I just think that this stuff is really awesome. We all put a lot of work into this to make it as easy as possible for you guys. Again, we don't want to frustrate you. We want to give you tools that help you, you know, do things that you do have to do prior to closeout. These things do have to be done, and so why not start to take a look at them now, and why not have the system tell you what's wrong and give you the tools to fix it. We welcome your feedback. We really want you to tell us how this can be better, and that all can be funneled through the AAQ. Ryan, do you have anything else to add?
No, nothing else on my end. Again, just thank you, both you and Jennifer, for the presentation. I think it was very helpful, and please do reach out, folks. Please let us know. We're always striving to make the system work better, and I think we're really heading in that direction. So, thanks again.
Absolutely.
Okay, it looks like we can enter a wrap up. Yeah, I'm sorry, Jennifer.
Yeah, we had a couple questions here. We have a little bit of time, so let's see. Someone asks, is there a way to change the flag status back from completed?
Why would anybody want to do that? So these flags are based off of conditions or criteria in the system. So if you want a flag to go back to problem that needs solution, you can just undo whatever you did. Basically, I'm being silly. The flags are only going to generate if the flag criteria is met. So a particular flag, once it's completed, is done. But if that condition is, let's say, for example, the flag is expenditures, right, exceed drawdowns. Actually, let's use an action plan example. Let's say that it says no draws in 120 days. I think that's one, right? Or what is it, 180 days?
180.
You go in and actually, yeah, if you actually go in and create a draw, then that flag is going to go away. But if 180 days elapse again without a draw, then it's going to reappear. So you can't really undo that flag, right? Or the same thing that, like I was going to give the QPR example. If your expenditures exceed draws, and so you draw enough such that, you know, that no longer is the case, but then you go in and enter an additional round of expenditures that now exceeds drawdowns again, that flag is going to reappear. So to answer your question, you can't go backwards, but you certainly can create a condition where the flag is going to say, oh, this is a problem again, you've got a new flag.
Okay, thank you. Somebody asked, once a flag is corrected on the activity screen, will the action plan status change to submitted for review?
I'm sorry, please, can you repeat that again?
Once a flag is corrected on the activity screen, will the action plan status change to submit for review?
Okay, no. I mean, so the activity, you can only edit activities if they are in your queue, which means they are modified, resubmit when ready, or reviewed and approved. So if an action plan is in submitted awaiting review status, then you are not able to edit your action plan. And the, you know, doing anything with flags will never, the only way to get an action plan into submitted status is by clicking the submit button.
Thank you. And then somebody was saying that their display changes aren't readable, that the words and sentences seem to be a bit jumbled. If you have any tips for that person.
Yeah, the compare changes feature is really cool in that it does show you something has changed. And so, you know, prior to this feature, when a HUD rep would get an action plan, they would get a list of changes from their grantee, and they would get what looks like a complete document. And they would have to, on good faith, you know, look at what the grantee said they changed and go through it and you know, and just say, yes, okay, that's in fact what did happen. The compare changes feature, although not exactly what we wanted, and we hope to, you know, make it even better in the future, it does show you, hey, something happened right here. And the grantee did or did not say that happened. Likewise, a lot of grantees will accidentally make a change that kicks their action plan into modified status and not remember or even realize that it happened. And so you can use the compare changes feature to go in and actually see, oh, hey, look, you know, oh, now I do remember I did change that budget by $5 in order to cover that drawdown or whatever it might be. So it's meant as a supplement. It's not perfect. We hope to make it better. That's a generic answer to your question. If you want more specific, you know, help on what you're experiencing, please submit that to the DRGR AAQ.
Mm-hmm. Just to add to that, I mean, as Tyler mentioned, it's not perfect, and we would, of course, like to improve it. But I think it's also, after having used it quite a bit myself, it's kind of just taking takes some time to get used to. And what it's really doing is not so much, at least from what I've seen, is not so much jumbling words, meaning, you know, a word is still the same word that was typed in, but it's filling in spaces with characters that just don't belong, like question marks and other weird characters. Once you get used to those things, then you can parse out, you can really pull out what was changed and what was done. I mean, it can be a really useful tool, but again, you know, if there's something beyond that, like actual words that are being mixed up or you know, even words within a sentence, letters in a word or words in a sentence that are being mixed up or garbled, please let us know. I think that would mean that there's something wrong with it. But if there are just some odd characters, then again, just give it a little bit of time, keep trying to use it, and I think you'll get the hang of it. I know I have, and I think others have as well. But I think it can be a real useful tool.
Thank you. And with that, I think we have taken all our questions. I did want to just remind folks of these resources here. You've got the HUD Exchange, and on the HUD Exchange, you can submit your Ask a Question. There is, of course, troves of information about DRGR at the HUD Exchange at the DRGR page, including the user manual, fact sheets, additional tools are listed there as well, things that we didn't talk about today. There's just lots of good things. And you also want to know that if you want more information on flags and the criteria that trigger flags, there are fact sheets on flags specifically, and you can go to those fact sheets and get more information about the criteria that's going to be triggering these flags. On the HUD Resource Exchange, you can also, like I said, submit your Ask a Questions. If you do use the Ask a Question feature, you'll get faster results if you include some screenshots, because it allows the expert who receives your question to troubleshoot immediately instead of trying to get back with you in order to get those screenshots or get on a screen share or something like that. So just a little tip about using the AAQ. Always try to send a screenshot of any error message or strange thing that you're encountering. For MSP grantees, we've mentioned at least one or two times here the DRGR office hours. And DRGR office hours are for NSP grantees specifically who are working towards closeout. So if you're working towards closeout and you're trying to reconcile your DRGR data and you're having some trouble, you can speak with your HUD rep. Your HUD rep will talk with headquarters to get you set up with some DRGR office hours. The office hours give you 3 to 5 hours of technical assistance with a DRGR expert, and in most cases you can get that assistance the very same week that you requested. And so it is a really valuable resource for NSP grantees who are working towards closing their grant. Tyler, I think you had a little announcement that you want to make for any HUD reps who might be listening in right now.
Yeah, we're holding a similar session for CPD reps directly after this, and so if any CPD reps are on the line now, you will need to log out of this Webex and log into the Skype link that I sent for that webinar, and that will be begin in 5 minutes.
Okay, great. And finally, I just want to invite everyone to please take a look at the survey that's going to pop up at the end of this webinar. Once we conclude the webinar officially here, you're going to get a survey link. Your responses to those survey questions are always helpful to us in improving our webinars for the future. There are some text boxes there where you can include narrative responses. We love them. They're very much more enlightening often than just the checkbox questions. But I just want to let you know that if you have any policy or programmatic questions that you want to ask, that's not the best place for it. You really want to use the AAQ to submit those kinds of questions in order to get answers. In addition to that, I wanted to remind everybody that on Tuesday, this coming Tuesday, November 14th, we're going to be having another NSP webinar. That webinar is going to focus on long-term rental compliance for NSP grantees. And that webinar is the first in a series of webinars that are going to be designed to provide programmatic guidance towards for NSP grantees particularly those who are trying to close out their grants that have hit obstacles along the way. So that, again, that webinar is on Tuesday the 14th, 2 to 4 Eastern Time on long-term rental compliance. And we're going to be having lots more webinars to come, probably about one every 4 weeks or so. And so keep an eye out for that. If you haven't signed up for any of the mailing lists for DRGR, NSP, or disaster recovery, you can do that on the HUD exchange as well. And with that, I want to thank you all for joining us. Thanks to HUD for giving us this training opportunity. And also, thank you all for joining us. And, oh, Ryan wanted to just give a little plug about the release. Yeah, so Tyler mentioned the new release that's going to be coming out. Tyler, do you want to just give one little shout out again about the release for DRGR?
Yeah, there's going to be a new release. It's coming out on November 20th. It contains some new features. I think the biggest new feature is, CPD reps will, located in headquarters, will be able to track monitoring and technical assistance visits just like grantees. In addition, there'll be a new SF425 capability, and we'll have a new Heroes capability where you can actually link activities to Heroes environmental reviews. We're changing the way that emails go out. We're making them configurable so that way we can, address any email-related issues on the fly instead of requiring a release. What else am I missing, Ryan? I know it's chucked full of goodies.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of them are smaller fixes and things that most folks won't see. But the totals, so we'll be displaying the overall calculations, the grant level calculations, and they should be accurate now, right? Like the overall benefit test and
yeah, and the QPR.
Yeah, and the QPR. So that's a pretty big one. But I think you hit the main ones.
So stay tuned for all of that. We're working on fact sheets as we always do, and those will come out. We'll try to time it with the release. and those will get up on the exchange. Oh yeah, minor fixes to the to the flags as we discussed, and you'll get a notification of that. But you won't see. It should be. It's not as major as this release we've discussed, but it definitely has some really awesome things in it. So stay tuned.
Yeah, great. Thank you. All right. With that, we'll wrap up. Thanks everyone for joining. Again, add yourself to the different listservs that are available on the exchange. That will give you information about upcoming webinars, and we will look forward to seeing you there. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you all.